message. Our fifth speaker is Catherine Bondok, Attorney Eduardo Katakutan's niece, and Tita Lynn is the eldest child of Lolo's younger brother, Rodolfo Katakutan and Melencio Katakutan.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Good evening po to my dear Katakutan family and our relatives and friends in the Philippines and around the world who have joined us today to celebrate the life of my uncle, Tata. Pamantikya na ako. Again, ako po'y Catherine Bondok, Lin to my family. Paunaka na pong Tata Ding and the eldest daughter of his younger brother, Ruding, my dad, right here by my side. I am honored to have been invited to speak today on behalf of my dad and my mom, Miling, and my three younger siblings, Myrna, June, and Ryan. In preparation for me speaking today, I sat down and talked to my dad, hoping he would share some memorable and maybe even funny stories of their childhood. My dad tried, but unfortunately, he kept saying, and he was even apologetic about it, matuwa na ako, kailangan ko masyadong natatandanan, which means I'm too old now. I just really don't remember much anymore. So I kind of scratched my head a bit and wondered what I could share on his behalf, but only to realize later that all I had to do was look at him and listen to him, and that I really didn't need much details after all. You see, my dad has always been the superhero figure in my life, my idol whose footsteps I followed. But in that moment, when I asked him about his memories of his Goya, my dad seemingly went back in time and transformed back to when he was a young man, the little brother who spoke the absolute world of his Goya. Some of you may know their father and my grandfather, Moises Katakutan, passed away at a young age. I believe he was the incumbent mayor of Apalit when he died. My dad said because they were still young, I think they were teenagers at that time, he and my aunts and my uncles ended up being raised by different relatives, and they had to live separately from each other. While my dad spoke highly of the relatives who adopted them, I can only piece together that theirs must not have been an easy life. But even if my dad can no longer recall vivid details of what their life must have been like, as he sat there next to me, trying so hard to reminisce and remember for me, what I saw and most certainly felt was a younger brother's love and adoration for his big brother. And for a moment there, and for the first time in days since we got the news of Tata Ding's passing, I didn't see grief and sadness in his face as he thought of his Goya. My dad described the loss of their father as a huge turning point in their lives, and how Tata Ding was suddenly pushed into the role of being the man of the family. Looking at him, he seemed to be in complete awe of his Goya, who he said saw it as his responsibility to fill the huge void their father's passing left behind. You know, with my grandmother, Janisha, and his 8 siblings, and I repeat, 8, 4 sisters and 4 brothers, one can only imagine how heavy that responsibility must have felt on his very young shoulders, that pressure or fear that would have overwhelmed many of us. And yet Tata Ding bravely took that role to heart. If he was scared, my dad said they rarely felt it. When they didn't have much, he was generous, but he also made them appreciate what they did have. In times when not having a father was rough, he made up for their father's absence in his simple ways, and they never felt alone. Because Tata Ding was always there with his unwavering love and commitment to the family. He became every bit, and perhaps so much more, the patriarch, the foundation, the source of strength, and the steady guiding light in all their lives. And then my dad whispered to me, and he said, well, he kind of helped me with girls too. And I was kind of taken aback because even as he held back in tears, my dad had this boyish smile in his face. And I kind of blurted out, "Dad, you barely remember any stories from your childhood, but you remember how Tata Ding helped you with girls?" And my mom was sitting right next to us. So now here comes my mom in their lives. Because Tata Ding took that father role very seriously, it was Tata Ding who went with my dad to ask for my mom's hand in marriage. And there started a strong bond between my mom and Tata Ding. My mom lost her father during the Japanese War when she was a baby. So she grew up without really that real sense of belonging. But in thinking of Tata Ding, in my mom's own words, she said Tata Ding became not only the big brother, but also the father that she never had in her entire life until then. And that as lost and lonely as she felt growing up, yearning for the love of a brother or father, she said she gained so much more, a truly great one, when she was blessed to become Tata Ding's sister-in-law. Because Tata Ding welcomed my mom wholeheartedly into the Katakutan family and loved her like his very own sister. And because of that, my mom said she no longer felt lost. She no longer felt alone. You may have never known this, Tata Ding, but you gave my mom this wonderful and life-changing gift, because finally, my mom felt she belonged to a family that not only welcomed her, but also accepted, embraced, and truly loved her. So Tata Ding, if my mom never had the opportunity to tell you personally, she wants me to tell you how grateful she was to you for that gift. So our family grew, and with a role model like Tata Ding, my dad became the almost perfect husband and father to all of us. Eventually, we moved to the US, where we have been living for almost 34 years now with kids of our own. The last time I went back was to the Philippines was in 2014. And I remember Tata Ding was the very first visitor we had when he dropped by unannounced one early morning. I remember sleepily opening the gate for him as he told me that he heard his little brother was home and that he wanted to be the first one to welcome him. Now, even in my clouded jet-lagged brain, I remember thinking how incredibly loving that was. That even in their old age, he was still the same Koya to my dad, who would be there at a moment's notice. Just 2 months ago, during our Zoom call, Tata Ding gave us a long speech, a very, very, very long speech, in fact. And I remember giggling with my Auntie Edith. He reminded all of us of the importance of family, and that regardless of where we were in this world, he wanted us as cousins to remain close to each other. And then he gifted us with a trio with my dad and Tatanggos as they sang their favorite childhood tunes together. It was a delight to see. Little did we know then that we would lose him soon, and that beautiful sight of them singing together now feels like a parting gift he left for all of us. So our dear Tata Ding, thank you for being the head of our clan. We may not have realized this as we were growing up, and perhaps we are even guilty of having taken it for granted. But I wanted to let you know that the huge impact you had in the lives of our parents transcended through generations, as we strived and raised our own families and taught our children the same core values of faith, family, decency, humility, kindness, and compassion that you have instilled in all of us. And really, isn't that the most fitting and perfect way to remember and honor you and the amazing life that you live. Thank you very much for everything, my dear uncle. We will miss your quiet but strong and steady presence in our lives, that familiar voice, your words of wisdom, and even your adorable but not always successful attempts to speak Tagalog mixed with Kapampangan words that always made us fold in laughter and made for funny stories during our family get-togethers, and just everything about you. Our hearts may be broken now, but we are comforted by the thought of you in heaven with God, joyful and in peace, maybe finding a new cozy corner where you can take your power naps, reunited with Tita Let and all our loved ones who have gone before us. Please give our love to all of them. Goodbye for now, Tata Ding, and until we meet again, my dear uncle. Thank you. Dakal pong salamat for listening.
Thank you, Tita Lynn. Your words of love for Lolo were truly heartwarming.